What made Roman emperors never worry about the future? You've been living wrong if you haven't learned this from Epictetus. In the next 3 minutes, you'll understand why Marcus chose silence over arguing. Imagine this: the marble courtyards of Rome, torches flickering against stone walls, senators whispering in shadowed halls. The city hums with voices, gossip, and ambition, but Marcus Aurelius sits apart writing by candlelight. His quill scratches slowly, not to impress the world, but to discipline his own mind. Now imagine placing a glowing rectangle into his hands, your modern smartphone. Its endless scroll, its flashing lights, its noise. Would Marcus be captivated, or would he be horrified? You might not endure this reality check. Marcus would likely see what many of us cannot, that the feed owns your attention as surely as chains bind a prisoner. For a man who trained daily to master his thoughts, social media would appear as both temptation and test. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. To understand this better, let's go back to an ancient lesson from Marcus Aurelius himself, who warned, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Now place that wisdom against the world of constant updates, comments, and endless scrolling. You reflect on how Marcus disciplined himself against distraction. He walked through palaces buzzing with politics, through streets filled with merchants, shouting through camps crowded with restless soldiers. Each demanded his attention, yet his meditations show a man turning inward, reminding himself daily not to be dragged into noise. Social media, with its flood of images and voices, would only have sharpened his test. Scholars still debate whether Stoicism is compatible with modern technology. Some argue that tools are neutral, only dangerous if misused. Others suggest that Stoicism requires withdrawal from such constant stimulation. What would Marcus decide? Likely he would say the device itself is nothing. It is your judgment of it, your use of it, that shapes virtue or vice. You think of Marcus as emperor receiving reports from every frontier. News of wars, plagues, conspiracies, all arriving daily, all demanding response. That was his feed. He could not escape it, but he could master his response. Perhaps he would see your feed the same way a stream of outside events, indifferent, until you decide what weight they carry. And so you hold the phone in your hand and imagine Marcus whispering to you from the past. Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others when you neglect your own. His words press against the glow of the screen, reminding you that the endless scroll is not life, it is shadow. What matters is what you do with the time you still hold. Section 2. You feel the vibration in your pocket, the sudden flash of light, the sound that insists, "Look at me." Each notification calls for your mind, promising importance, demanding attention. You open your feed, and minutes dissolve into hours. Here you confront the new currency of your time, not coins of silver or gold, but fragments of attention. Marcus Aurelius would have seen this with piercing clarity, for he warned, "You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life elsewhere." To him, attention was life itself. What you choose to notice shapes what you become. And in the buzzing world of social media, your attention is not only a resource, it is prey. Algorithms are designed to pull it, twist it, hold it captive. You imagine Marcus seated in a Roman study, comparing this to the distractions of his own age: chariot races, gladiatorial games, the shouting of merchants, the gossip of courtyards. Rome's spectacles were designed to seduce the senses, to keep citizens entertained and docile. Today, the screen has replaced the circus, and your attention remains the prize. You reflect on Marcus's reign. Even while fighting wars on distant frontiers, he wrote each morning to remind himself not to be consumed by triviality. "Do not waste the rest of your life in thoughts about others," he repeated, guiding his mind away from the noise. His writings reveal a man conscious that focus is rare, that a wandering mind is a wasted life. How would he face the storm of updates, comments, and videos flashing by, likely as he faced the spectacles of Rome with measured detachment, refusing to trade the dignity of his inner life for the cheap lure of entertainment? Scholars debate whether Stoicism demands withdrawal from society or whether it asks only for discipline within it. Could a Stoic emperor scroll a feed and remain untouched? Some argue yes, Stoics believed in engaging with the world, not hiding from it. Others warn that no mind is strong enough to swim forever in currents of distraction without being swept away. The question lingers, can you hold your attention, or will it be spent by others? You remember times when your own attention scattered, when you checked your phone 100 times, each glance leaving you more restless. And you also remember the rare moments of full presence, a walk at dusk, a book in your hands, silence in the morning. Those moments fed you more deeply than any scroll. Marcus would call that nourishment for the soul far greater than the empty calories of constant updates. The empire he ruled needed his attention. Soldiers looked to him, citizens relied on him, crises demanded him. Yet he carved out stillness to protect his focus. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, he wrote, reminding himself that what he dwelt upon shaped his very being. If attention was life's currency, he spent it carefully investing in virtue, in wisdom, in justice. And you now hold that same choice in your hands. Each notification asks for a coin from your mind. Will you spend it blindly, or will you guard it as Marcus did, with vigilance and purpose? You already feel the truth rising in you. The value of your life is measured not in years, but in where your attention rests. Section 3. You scroll, and the feed begins to shape itself around you. Every click, every like, every pause of your eyes builds an invisible wall. Soon you notice that the voices you hear are only echoes of your own thoughts, your own biases repeated back to you. Social media calls it connection, but Marcus Aurelius would have recognized it as something far older: tribes, factions, echo chambers. He might compare it to the Roman Forum, where citizens gathered to debate, yet with one crucial difference. The forum exposed you to opposition, while the feed often shields you from it. Marcus himself was no stranger to division. As emperor, he presided over a senate fractured by competing interests, generals who clashed in strategy, citizens who rioted when bread ran scarce. He could not retreat into a chamber of his own opinions. He had to listen, to weigh, to confront. His meditations reveal this tension. If someone can show me my error and prove me wrong, I will gladly change. For I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. Imagine placing those words against the backdrop of online arguments where rarely does anyone listen and fewer still admit error. You reflect on the difference. In Rome's forum, argument sharpened the mind, for truth emerged through dialogue. In today's digital halls, the design is often the opposite. Your feed gives you comfort, not challenge. And yet Marcus would likely remind you, comfort dulls, challenge strengthens. He would ask whether you are truly engaging with reality or merely gazing into a mirror polished by algorithms. Scholars continue to question whether Stoicism requires open dialogue with opponents or quiet withdrawal from futile disputes. One side argues that Stoics valuing reason must enter the arena of debate. Another side warns that much discourse is nothing more than noise unworthy of attention. Marcus himself seems to have lived in both worlds, willing to hear correction, but disciplined enough to ignore fruitless arguments. His silence was not avoidance, but selectivity. You consider your own experience. How often have you seen a heated thread online, voices rising like the shouts of a Roman crowd? Perhaps you joined, typing furiously, only to feel emptier at the end. Did anyone change their mind? Or did each side retreat further into their echo, satisfied only with their own noise? And then you remember those rare moments when you stayed silent, when you resisted the pull to reply. In that silence, you found peace, and the argument burned itself out without your fuel. Imagine Marcus watching the endless digital debates of today. Would he laugh at the spectacle the way senators once clashed in marble halls? Or would he sigh at how little has changed, human pride still louder than truth? He might remind you of his simple instruction: if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. In that light, much of the feed vanishes into insignificance. And so you begin to see the forum within your own hand. The question is not whether it exists, but how you will walk through it. Will you stay trapped in echo chambers comforted by agreement, or will you seek the rare and difficult voices that sharpen you? Marcus's example shows you the path open to correction, silent, before folly, committed always to truth. Section 4. You look at the numbers beneath each post, likes, followers, views. They gleam like coins in a digital marketplace, each one whispering that you matter more if you collect them. Marcus Aurelius would have recognized this instantly, for Rome itself was built on a hunger for honor, titles, and applause. Senators chased statues in the Forum. Generals longed for triumphal arches, and citizens measured worth by how loudly the crowd cheered their name. And yet Marcus reminded himself again and again, all is ephemeral fame, and the famous as well. You picture him at dawn, writing by candlelight, outside the city, prepared to hail him as emperor, father of the people, conqueror of enemies. Inside, he wrote not about glory, but about how quickly it fades. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died, and the same thing befell them both. To him, status was dust. He trained himself daily to see beyond the illusions of honor. Now you hold your phone watching the rise and fall of numbers. They appear solid, yet like Rome's applause, they vanish as quickly as they appear. A post that goes viral today is forgotten tomorrow. Would Marcus condemn the pursuit of followers? Likely not outright. He might instead ask, why do you chase it? Do you seek to serve others or only to inflate your ego? For the Stoic intention matters more than outcome. You reflect on your own life. How often have you measured yourself against the tally of others? Someone else gains more recognition, more applause, more digital statues, and envy creeps in. Yet when you step back, you see that none of it endures. The crowd moves on, always hungry for the next spectacle. Your worth cannot be built upon their fickle gaze. Philosophers still wrestle with this. Should Stoics withdraw from public recognition altogether, or can status be used in service of virtue? Some argue that influence can spread wisdom. Others caution that the pursuit of it corrupts the soul. Marcus himself lived this tension. He accepted Rome's honors, but reminded himself they were meaningless, useful, only if they helped him live rightly. You imagine him holding a phone, seeing thousands of likes beneath his words. Would he smile at the praise, or would he close the app whispering, "Soon they will all be gone, as will you"? You feel the sting of that thought, the reminder that your chase for digital glory is no less fragile than the Roman thirst for marble monuments. And so you begin to see likes and followers for what they are, not measures of your worth, but reflections of passing attention. The true measure, Marcus would say, is whether your actions align with virtue, whether your soul remains unshaken when the applause stops. In the quiet, you imagine laying down the phone as he once laid aside the laurel wreath. Both shine briefly, both fade. What remains is the character you carry, untouched by numbers. Section 5. You pause in your scrolling and you notice something deep within yourself, a sting of envy, a quiet restlessness as you look at the curated lives of others. Perfect vacations, flawless bodies, endless success. The screen becomes a mirror that distorts, reflecting not who you are, but what you lack. Marcus Aurelius knew this feeling well, though his world had no Instagram feeds. In Rome, citizens measured themselves against the wealth of neighbors, the honors of senators, the victories of generals. Envy was as common as the cobblestones underfoot. And yet Marcus reminded himself very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself. You imagine him walking through the forum past statues of men celebrated for their deeds. Each monument whispered of greatness, tempting comparison. But Marcus turned inward, repeating that virtue, not fame, not riches, was the true measure of a man. If he could resist the pull of marble statues, how much more would he urge you to resist the glossy images on your screen? You reflect on how comparison multiplies in the digital age. The Romans compared themselves to neighbors they saw each day. You compare yourself to millions across the globe. The scale of envy has grown vast, but the medicine remains the same: contentment in what you control. When you scroll, you see fragments of others' lives carefully chosen to display success, never weakness. Marcus would call it illusion, and illusion is powerless if you refuse to give it weight. Philosophers still debate whether envy can ever be useful. Some argue that comparison motivates improvement. Others warn that envy rots the soul, distracting you from your own path. Stoicism sides with the latter, for envy places your happiness in someone else's hands. Marcus's writings show his refusal to tether his peace to anything outside his own reasoned choice. You recall your own struggles. Perhaps you saw a friend succeed and felt bitterness instead of joy. Perhaps you compared your quiet life to another's highlights and felt small. But then you remember those rare moments when you turned inward, grateful for what you already had. In those moments, you felt richer than any curated feed could make you. Imagine Marcus confronted with a timeline of endless success stories. Would he envy, or would he sigh, reminding himself that behind each post is a human life, fragile, fleeting, as prone to suffering as any other? He might whisper, "Do not be disturbed by the pictures they paint." The truth is often otherwise. You feel the weight of that knowing, that every image hides struggle, that no one escapes the burdens of life. And so you begin to practice his remedy. When envy rises, you remind yourself of what you control: your thoughts, your choices, your actions. You cannot govern the fortunes of others, nor should you. You focus instead on living well, on building strength within. Slowly, the envy fades, replaced by contentment. You close your eyes for a moment, and the screen darkens. In the stillness, you hear Marcus's voice across centuries urging you not to waste your soul chasing shadows. Happiness is not found in their images, but in the quiet mastery of your own. Section 6. You feel it when the feed explodes. An outrage spreads like fire, burning through every corner of the screen. Someone said the wrong thing, someone failed, someone offended, and suddenly the crowd is howling. You read the comments, one after another, words sharpened into weapons. This is the new arena, the digital coliseum, where voices replace swords. And here you must ask, how would Marcus Aurelius face such storms? Marcus lived in an empire that thrived on public outrage. The Roman crowd could roar with praise one day and demand blood the next. Chariot races turned violent mobs, filled the streets, and politicians courted anger as if it were currency. Yet Marcus resisted the pull. In his meditations, he reminded himself, when you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. then you will forget your anger. You imagine him watching today's online outrage scrolling through the endless fury. Would he join the chorus? Or would he set the device aside, seeing it for what it is, a distraction, a test, a trap? Likely he would remind you that anger rarely harms the offender. It harms the one who carries it. In choosing silence and composure, you do not excuse wrongdoing. You protect your soul from being twisted by fury. You reflect on how outrage tempts you. The more you read, the more you feel pulled in. You type replies convinced you are correcting injustice, but afterward you feel drained, as if the anger of strangers has seeped into you. Compare that with the times you resisted closing the app, walking outside, breathing deeply. The world felt lighter, and you had lost nothing by refusing to join the digital mob. Philosophers still debate should Stoics intervene when public anger is justified, or withdraw from the noise. Some argue that silence is complicity. Others note that constant outrage blinds us, making it impossible to see clearly or act justly. Marcus would likely insist on balance. Act where action is possible, but do not waste your soul in shouting contests that change nothing. Think of him in the Senate faced with slander and opposition. He could have roared back, but he wrote instead, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." His composure became his shield, his refusal to be remade by anger, his victory. Imagine him now reading the flames of social media. He would smile sadly and remind you outrage is endless, but your time is short. Why spend it this way? You begin to see the pattern. Outrage online is less about truth and more about spectacle. People shout to be seen, not to be heard. If you step away, you lose nothing but noise. If you stay, you risk your peace. Marcus would urge you to guard your mind as a fortress, letting only what serves virtue pass through the gates. So the next time outrage surges across your screen, you pause. You feel the pull, but you breathe. You remember Marcus walking calmly through angry crowds, holding silence, guarding his reason. And in that stillness, you discover that your composure is more powerful than their fury. Section 7. You scroll past the ads, the influencers, the endless stream of products and promises. Each one tells you that you are incomplete until you buy, until you consume, until you show the world you have more. The feed becomes a digital marketplace, not unlike the Roman spectacles that dazzled citizens with bread and circus. Marcus Aurelius would have recognized it instantly, the lure of vanity, the emptiness of excess. He wrote, "Very little is needed for a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Imagine him walking past the Circus Maximus, watching the crowds shout for horses, for prizes, for spectacle. He saw how Rome kept its people busy with games distracting them from the practice of virtue. And now you hold a screen that offers the same constant temptation, endless display, a theater of vanity. Marcus would not condemn the marketplace itself. It is human to trade, to build, to create. But he would warn that when the pursuit of things becomes the pursuit of self-worth, you are enslaved by what you own. You reflect on how modern consumerism has merged with social media. Influencers flaunt possessions as if they were virtues, as if the right shoes, cars, or vacations could buy dignity. Yet Marcus, who wore simple cloaks, even as emperor, would whisper otherwise dignity cannot be purchased. Virtue needs no brand name. Philosophers debate whether Stoicism encourages simplicity to the point of asceticism or whether it simply counsels moderation. Some argue that to live stoically is to strip life bare, owning almost nothing. Others insist that Stoicism is not about denial, but discipline, using what you have without being used by it. Marcus's own life reflects the second view. He had wealth, palaces, servants, but in his writings he spoke of them as if they were already gone. He lived among riches, but did not let them define him. You think of your own scrolling. How often do you feel the subtle tug that if you had more, you would be happier? Yet when you look honestly, you see the truth. Each purchase brings only a brief satisfaction, followed by hunger for the next. It is not the object that enslaves you, but the desire itself. And Marcus would remind you, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor. Imagine if he stood beside you, watching the endless ads flash by. He would not scorn the products nor the sellers. He would simply ask, does this serve your soul or only your vanity? The question lingers as you scroll, and suddenly the glitter dulls. You begin to see the feed not as treasure but as noise. Karma plays here too, though in quieter ways. Those who chase vanity end up empty, while those who restrain their hunger find peace. The endless marketplace devours those who cannot stop feeding it, but those who pause, who refuse to measure themselves by possessions, are free. So you practice restraint. You see the ad, the influencer, the vanity, and you breathe. You let the desire pass without purchase. In that silence, you feel stronger, not weaker. And perhaps you hear Marcus's voice again, reminding you that a happy life is not built on what you display, but on what you quietly master within. Section 8. You pause on a photo carefully edited, polished to perfection. The smile is flawless, the background immaculate, the caption written to sound effortless, yet planned. You know this world well filters, poses curated fragments. But beneath it, you sense a hollowness. Marcus Aurelius would have seen it too, for in his own time people also crafted masks. Senators rehearsed their gestures, generals staged their triumphs, citizens wore togas and jewelry to project importance. And yet Marcus whispered to himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. He longed for authenticity, not performance. In his meditations, you find a man stripping away pretense, reminding himself daily that virtue is not what you appear to be, but what you are when no one is watching. Against the backdrop of today's curated world, his words ring like a bell. Your task is not to look good, but to be good. You reflect on how social media magnifies performance. You show what is pleasing and hide what is painful. You measure yourself against illusions, forgetting that the truth of a life is not found in its surface. Marcus, who lived in palaces yet wrote about dust and decay, would urge you to remember the image fades, the essence remains. Philosophers still argue whether image can serve virtue. Can sharing an ideal self inspire others toward good? Or does every mask, no matter how noble, risk corrupting the soul with vanity? The Stoics leaned toward simplicity. They believed truth was sufficient without embellishment. If you are just, you need no stage. If you are wise, you need no audience. Think of Marcus himself. He could have commissioned endless statues, yet he left behind only words written in private, never intended for fame. Those words, uncurated and honest, are what endure. Imagine if he had access to filters and followers. Would he have used them, perhaps only to share reminders of virtue, never of vanity? His concern would be whether the tool served truth, not image. You recall moments in your own life when you presented yourself carefully, hoping to be admired. Perhaps you received the likes, the approval, the small rush of recognition. Yet later you felt emptiness, as though you had betrayed something within. Contrast that with moments of honesty, sharing without pretense or not sharing at all. Those moments carried peace, for they were aligned with your true self. Here, karma unfolds in silence. Those who live only by curated masks eventually collapse under the weight of them. The truth surfaces in time, and the mask shatters. But those who live authentically, even if unnoticed, remain steady. Marcus would tell you the approval of others should mean nothing to you if you understand what you are. So you step back from the curated world. You remind yourself that filters are shadows, applause is temporary, and only character endures. Your task is not to polish the surface, but to strengthen the core. You choose authenticity over illusion, truth over pretense. And in that choice you discover freedom, the same freedom Marcus carried, even while ruling an empire that demanded appearances. Section 9. You notice how quiet moments vanish in the digital age. Every pause is filled with a scroll, every silence replaced by a notification. The constant chatter follows you into bed, onto the train, into the morning light. You are rarely alone, though often lonely. Marcus Aurelius would have recognized this as a profound danger, for he built his life around cultivating inner stillness. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul, he wrote. He knew that the world is noisy, but the true refuge lies within. Imagine him at the frontier's camps, crowded with restless soldiers, rumors, swirling demands constant. Yet in the midst of it, Marcus wrote in his journal a private meditation carved out of silence. That was his social media ink on parchment thoughts directed not outward but inward. If he were handed your smartphone glowing with endless chatter, he might pity you for carrying a marketplace in your pocket and never leaving it behind. You reflect on how constant noise erodes the soul. You wake and reach for the feed before greeting the morning. You walk but rarely notice the trees, the sky, the passing faces. Silence feels uncomfortable, so you drown it. Yet Marcus would remind you, if you cannot sit quietly with yourself, how can you hope to master anything else? Philosophers still debate whether solitude is a virtue or a luxury. Some argue that humans are social by nature, that withdrawal risks selfishness. Others counter that, without solitude, true reflection is impossible. The Stoics leaned toward balance, engage with society, but retreat into yourself often, for the soul requires stillness as the body requires sleep. Marcus embodied this balance, ruling millions yet returning nightly to the solitude of his thoughts. Think of your own rare moments of stillness, walking without headphones, watching the dusk settle, sitting in a room without the glow of a screen. At first it feels strange, even empty, but slowly you sense a calm, rising, a deeper awareness of yourself. That is the solitude Marcus cherished, the silence that renews. Karma works here too, though not as punishment, but as neglect. A life lived in constant noise breeds confusion, restlessness, exhaustion. But a life that honors silence grows clear, strong, resilient. Those who never unplug are scattered. Those who retreat into quiet are whole. Marcus would have looked at your restless scrolling and asked gently, "Do you not see how much strength you lose by never being alone with your thoughts?" So you begin to practice it. You set the phone aside even for a little while. You sit, you breathe, you notice. The silence feels heavy, but soon it turns to light. You discover that solitude is not emptiness. It is presence, the presence of your own soul. And in that presence, you hear again Marcus's voice urging you to guard your inner citadel from the endless noise outside. Section 10. You picture Marcus Aurelius holding a smartphone for the first time. His brow furrows not at the technology itself, but at how easily it could master the one who carries it. He would not condemn the device. It is no different from a stylus, a scroll, or a courier's message. Tools are neutral. What matters is how you use them and whether they serve virtue or vanity. He would remind you the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. If the phone fills your thoughts with noise, your soul becomes restless. If it serves wisdom, it becomes a channel for virtue. You imagine him scrolling briefly, than closing the app with discipline. Perhaps he would use it to spread reminders of reason and justice, much like his meditations. But he would not linger. He would not measure himself by likes. He would not trade his inner calm for digital applause. The emperor who compared Alexander the Great to a mule driver would not bow before follower counts. You reflect on how this challenges you. The temptation is strong to use the phone as escape, as entertainment, as validation. Yet Marcus's presence reminds you that every moment spent is a piece of your life gone. Would you give your soul so cheaply, he whispers across centuries, do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. You realize then the question is not whether you should use social media, but whether you will use it with purpose. Philosophers debate whether Stoicism is adaptable to such modern temptations. Some argue that Marcus would reject the device altogether, withdrawing into silence. Others counter that he would embrace it as a means of practicing discipline. The truth likely lies between. Marcus did not run from life. He engaged with it, but with mastery. So too must you. Think of him during the Antonine Plague, faced with fear, misinformation, and panic. He did not amplify rumors nor spread despair. He wrote calmly, reminding himself of nature's cycles of what lies within control. Today's storms of information would not surprise him. They would only test his ability to remain steady. His advice to you would be the same: choose carefully what you consume, speak with honesty, act with justice, and guard your attention as you would guard Rome itself. You hold the phone again, and it feels different now. It is no longer a toy or a master. It is a tool waiting for your discipline. You remember Marcus's life an emperor, with every distraction at his command, yet a man who turned inward, reminding himself daily of what truly matters. He would not waste this device, but neither would he be wasted by it. So you breathe, you open your hand, and you see clearly the phone does not control you. Your judgment does. And in that judgment, guided by Stoic wisdom, you find freedom not from the device, but from the chains of unexamined use. Now the light softens, the scroll slows, and you return to quiet. Imagine once more the Roman emperor in his study, the candlelight flickering his hand, moving across parchment. Outside, the city stirs with noise and ambition, but inside, Marcus Aurelius writes, not for them, but for himself. He writes to remember what is easy to forget, that the world cannot take your peace unless you hand it over. You sit with that image, and you place it against your own life. The phone rests nearby, glowing faintly, carrying the weight of 1,000 voices. It is tempting, insistent, a chorus that never ends. But you now know what Marcus would have seen in it. He would not fear it nor worship it. He would weigh it. He would use it only as far as it served his virtue, and then he would set it aside. Your breath slows as you realize that you too can do the same. You are not bound to the scroll of the feed, not chained to the demand of every notification. You are free to choose where your attention rests, and in that freedom lies your strength. So tonight you imagine closing the phone, letting silence return. You feel the weight of stillness, the kind Marcus cherished. And in that stillness, you remember his words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You rest now reassured that your worth is not in followers, not in images, not in noise, but in the quiet discipline of your soul. The emperor's voice fades, but its echo remains, guiding you back to the strength within.